Hello my friends, today I will do my first video based on the Star Wars franchise. Since there is so much we can talk about, the video will be about the Jedi Knights. I guess you're already very familiar with Star Wars, but in case you're not, Star Wars is an American epic space opera franchise created by George Lucas, which began with his first movie in 1977, which quickly became a worldwide pop culture phenomenon. The franchise has been expanded into various films and other media, including television series, video games, novels, comic books, theme parks attractions, and theme areas comprising an all-fictional universe. George Lucas has long acknowledged the influence of the work by Joseph Campbell, professor of literature at Sarah Lawrence and foremost scholar of comparative mythologies and world religion. Campbell's best-known book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, introduces its fundamental thesis, the monomyth, that comprises the creative concept of the hero's journey. This is clearly reflected in the narrative structures, character types, and even plot-specific choices that comprises and drives the high romance of the adventures of Luke Skywalker, as well as the epic tragedy that is the downfall of Luke's father, the Jedi warrior Anakin, and his transformation into Luke's mortal enemy Darth Vader. Carl Jung was a big influence in Campbell's work, as he was introduced to him while studying in Europe. Jung archetypes are clearly identified in his book, and therefore their influence in Star Wars. Reason why until these days, these characters continue to be so relevant. Regarding the Jedi Order, well, it was a noble religious order of protectors united in their devotion to the light side of the Force, with a history dating back thousands of years before the rise of the Galactic Empire. The Jedi Knights, noted for their lightsabers and natural ability to harness the powers of the Force, stood as the guardians of peace and justice in the Galactic Republic. Before going into the occult details of the Jedi Knights, as an action figure and Star Wars fan, I have a collection mainly of 3.75-inch action figures from the Power of the Force line, the Blu-ray movies, figures from each movie, vehicles which include the Millennium Falcon, as well as 12-inch figures and a couple of comics from the Dark Horse publisher. So one of the things that immediately caught my attention, mainly in the Star Wars prequels, that resonated to me right away, mainly because I was immersed into the study of old and occult societies, was the fact that this celibate knight sword fighting order fell from grace so abruptly after the authority at that precise moment betrayed them and were hunted and many killed. This last description can easily be used with no exception to describe another order which sort of had the same fate. The poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, also known as the Order of the Solomon's Temple, the Knight Templars, or simply the Templars, were a Catholic military order founded in 1119. The Templars became a favored charity throughout Christianity and grew rapidly in membership and power. They were prominent in Christian finance. Templar Knights, in their distinctive white mantles with red cross, were among the most skilled fighting units of the Crusades. The Templars were closely tied to the Crusades. When the Holy Land was lost, support for the order faded. Rumors about the Templars' secret initiation ceremonies created distrust, and King Philip IV of France, deeply in debt to the order, took advantage of the distrust to destroy them and erase his debt. In 1307, he had many of the order's members in France arrested, tortured into giving false confessions, and burned at the stake. Pope Clement V disbanded the order in 1312 under pressure from King Philip. The abrupt reduction in power of a significant group in European society gave rise to the speculation, legend, and legacy through the ages. But who were the Knight Templars and what was the real purpose of this order? A while ago, while searching the origins of Freemasonry, authors Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas, on their book The Second Messiah, proposed a thesis where they found proof that the Templars' real objective was not to protect the Christians on their way to Jerusalem, but instead to excavate under the ruins of Herodes' temple with the purpose of finding documents and relics that were buried underneath back in the time when the Romans attacked and destroyed the city of Jerusalem and the temple built by Herodes back on the year 70. They say that based on the information left by historian Flavius Josephus, there were underneath the temple tunnels where Jews hid. J.M. Allegro, on his book The Treasure of the Copper Scroll, says that a document found in Qumran, also known as the Ascension of Moses, said that the kingdom of God would come after all humans and earth be erased, and that all Jews who fought this war were told to bury all their most sacred belongings and treasures close to the Sanctum Sanctorum, under the custody of God. Let's remember that the Sanctum Sanctorum was the holy chamber within the temple. Following these instructions, the Jews, left on despair, proceed to bury, as instructed, all the scrolls with sacred information, rituals, and their most precious belongings underneath the temple. When the city was on the verge of destruction by the Romans and Jews felt this was the moment they were waiting for according to the Ascension of the Moses Scroll. The research goes on to say that the 9 French knights that offered their services to protect the Christians visiting Jerusalem to King Balduino II in the year 1118 instead spent the following 9 years exclusively in the excavation underneath the temple and were not involved in any activity where they seemed to be protecting pilgrims. In the year 1128, they were ascended to the category of Holy Order by the Pope. The main goal of these knights was to research and found the old scrolls with information of the actual old traditions from old Judaism coming from Egypt and the time of Moses himself. According to the research, these French individuals were descendants of a lineage of Jews that were able to escape and have knowledge of the information kept underneath the temple, and the goal was to find it. The lineage refers themselves as the Rex Dukes, or God Kings, and were composed of 2 distinctive lineages, one descendant of King David associated with the temple column called Boaz, and one descendant of the lineage of priesthood associated with the column of the temple called Hakim. Both columns are of highly significant on Masonic rituals. This theme about lineage reminds me of the story of Ruth, great-grandmother of King Solomon, who became a widow from his husband called Boaz, like the column associated to the lineage of King David. The story gives the name of the term son of the widow to everyone that descends from her lineage, which include King David and Solomon, and also is the name that Freemasons gives to themselves. Part of the occult speculation about Templars were their activities. They were often accused of having rituals, stepping on the cross, and worshipping a strange head skull image called Baphomet, which sadly is now associated to the devil. And when magician and Freemason Eliphas Levi made a symbolic representation of this figure using symbolism on his book Dogma and Ritual of High Magic, the figure shows the symbolism that represents the opposite sides of nature, as well as the masculine and feminine aspect. Let's keep in mind that the pentagram he used on the forehead points to the top, and for magicians this represents the spirit over the elements and the superiority of the soul over the material world. According to Hugh Schofield, who was one of the original researchers working on the Dead Sea Scrolls found at Qumran and is the author of many books on biblical history, most notably the Passover Plot. While working on the Dead Sea Scrolls, Schofield noticed that Jewish used a cipher technique called @bash, which he used to translate some of the words that were undetectable to the scholars. Schofield became very interested in the charges of heresy labeled against the Knight Templars, and particularly the etymology of the word Baphomet. It was decided by Schofield that he would apply the @bash cipher, which he was convinced the Templars were aware of. If one writes the word Baphomet in Hebrew, and remember Hebrew letters read from right to left, the result reads as the Greek word Sophia, that translates into wisdom. Sophia also resembles a similar Greek word meaning knowledge, which is gnosis, and is written with the Greek letter gamma, and the equivalent of this letter in Hebrew is Gimel, which happens to be the third letter in Hebrew alphabet, letter G. A skull, in present days, is still part of some initiation rituals. Anyone seeing this without any type of context would assume that a head or skull also happens to be worshipped by that group. Speculation in regards to the order surrounding the circumstances involving the last year of their great-grand master named Jacques de Molay are very interesting. Not sure if you know, but the order to arrest the Templars took place on Friday the 13th, which is considered a day of bad luck, because Friday, October 13, 1307, King Philip IV of France ordered the arrest of the Knights Templar. They were arrested, many killed and tortured, and forced to confess to heretic acts. Sometimes later, Jacques de Molay, as he was about to be executed, appealed and said, "From this your heinous judgment to the living and true God who is in heaven, warning the Pope that within a year and a day he and Philip IV would be obligated to answer for their crimes in God's presence." In the event, Philip and Clement both died within a year of Molay's execution, Clement finally succumbing to a long illness on the 20th of April of 1314, and Philip dying due to a stroke while hunting. This is depicted on the tarot deck that stands for death, which happens to be number 13, showing precisely the fate of both the Pope, Clement, and King Philip IV. This goes in line with some researchers that believe the tarot origin goes back to all civilizations, and Templars were able to find these cards as they were part of their rituals and transmitting a larger knowledge. Finally, on their book The Second Messiah, the authors believe and present proof that William Imbert, sometimes referred to as William of Paris, was the chief inquisitor of the French Inquisition, found a secret place where private ceremonies attended by only certain Templars night took place. The members of the Inquisition of Paris would have found a skull and two tied bones. They also would have found a white linen shroud. Knights and Lomas argue that Molay was nailed to a doorframe of this secret room, one hand directly upwards over his head and the other outstretched to his side. An object representing a crown of thorns was then thrust in his head. He would then be left for hours until just before the point of death. The two authors would run experiments with a similar covered body wrapped in the same way with a shroud, and when placing the body into a soft bed, results would match almost identically to the shroud, following a technique used replicating a photographic image via small light, where they believe the acids of the body sweat when evaporating, the temperature of the body after the beating contribute to the process. Carbon testing in 1988 would put the age of the linen cloth between 1260 and 1390, with an error margin of 60 years or so. That would fit perfectly around the dates of de Molay's torture in 1307. not to mention the uncanny likeness to the image we have of Demolay. Therefore, they concluded the image on the shroud is none other than the last Grand Master of the Templars, Jacques Demolay. So here we have an order surrounded by mystery knights, warriors, owners of a great secret. People do not understand secret rituals, and betrayed by a ruler who took the best of them and end up turning him as a symbol for the same authority that betrayed him and crushed the order. The fallen knight became the symbol, worship of the very same powers who then betrayed him and betrayed them. So I hope you like this video. Please subscribe to my channel, follow on Instagram, share it as well. If you like these topics, please take a look at my other videos regarding King Solomon Temple and Doctor Strange, other cool videos about Superman, Thor, Shazam, Rorschach. And please, remember, do what you will, and love is the law. 93.